Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah Williams, and what you have just clicked on is the poorly made podcast I put together with the microphone on my headphones called ElizaSpeaks. This was formed out of an idea I came up with a few months back where I can rant about political issues with research arguments to contribute to the conversation and not be censored on other platforms to adhere to their specific agenda. If you know me personally, you know that I have a very passionate and outspoken voice in the activism community. I say what's on my mind and put it simply, with a few cuss words here and there. If you're saying or doing something that is affecting me and the people around me, I'm not known for sitting ladylike and biting my tongue like the good little girl I was raised to be. I'll cuss you the fuck out while blowing your hypocrisy out of the water for everyone to see. And yes, there are times and places to be respectful, but this right here is all mine. It's my time, so please, if you are triggered by curse words, have a toxic masculinity and or femininity aura tied in sides with your ego, racist, homophobic, or just an all-around dickhead, then kindly click off. As for the rest of you, enjoy the show. Today's episode is called If I'm a Murderer, Then What Does That Make You, Congress? Now listen, if I'm a murderer for aborting a 6-week-old zygote, then what do we call the people who enable mass shootings, let people die from lack of healthcare, pollute our environment, peddle Oxycontin, and shoot unarmed civilians? Alright, now I'm not going into intensive detail on this idiotic bill. Assuming you've heard about it, it's been spamming the news for weeks. Even if you wanted to avoid it, you couldn't. And now here you are listening to my podcast on this very controversial topic. This heartbeat bill bans abortion as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy, and already 11 states have passed such a law this year alone. Georgia, Louisiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, Alabama, Utah, Arkansas, Indiana, and North Dakota. And you know what? Probably a few more by the time this goes out. This bill prohibits abortion once a fetal heartbeat can be detected. But, even though it's common sense to know that this will prohibit abortion before many women even know they are pregnant, I wouldn't expect senators who were placed into office and are expected to obtain knowledge on the things they vote on and not counting on their own personal agendas to know that. Most of the men writing these anti-choice heartbeat bills don't know the first thing about a woman's body outside of the things they want from it. Let's keep it real here. Pro-life was never about saving lives or having the right to life. It's always been about control. Take a glance at a history book. It's all there. Your hypocrisy in all its glory has been recognized in the annals of history. I mean, isn't it interesting that a country founded to allow freedom of religious persecution is now using religion to persecute freedoms? You demanded the government be out of your lives, out of your business, and out of your bedroom. Now you're in our wombs. But you don't care. You don't care because you've never been pregnant. You don't care because you don't understand, nor do you want to. You don't care if millions of women are screaming at you to leave our bodies alone because you've learned to tune out our cries when we're being drugged and raped. You don't care. So why would you care about a non-developed fetus when you don't care about grown-ass women? You don't. Well, what if the baby you abort grows up and cures cancer? What if the teenage girl you're denying an abortion to grows up and cures cancer? What if she takes us to Mars? What if she helps to resolve world hunger? But now she can't afford to get an education. Instead, she has to take care of a baby. What about her? An actual living human? Again, with the hypocrisy. For instance, the fact that a 16-year-old girl wanted to adopt a child, the government wouldn't allow it. She isn't done with her education, she can't financially support herself, and she isn't a legal adult. But if she gets pregnant, the government can ban her from getting an abortion. How is that logical? You don't care. On July 1st, 2018, there were 16,154 children in foster care in Ohio alone. That number is projected to hit 20,000 by 2020. Ohio, which is one of the states that passed a law forbidding abortion, wants us to believe they care about children. Ohio, the state that has the 11th highest rate of babies dying before their first birthday. Ohio, the state that ranks 35th in healthcare and 31st in education. You're obviously not pro-life. You obviously don't care. If you care about children, why do school teachers have to buy their own school supplies? Why is healthcare a for-profit industry? Why do they pretend like the planet isn't being ruined? Why are children detained in cages? Why do they favor gun lobbies over victims? They don't care. We're against abortion because we love our children. No, you don't. Do you support guaranteed maternity leave? Nope. Oh, okay, well, what about funding CHIP and nutrition programs for low-income children? Nope. Alright, well, what about banning military-style assault rifles used to massacre children in schools? Nope. Oh, alright then. This next paragraph is going to take my breath away, but let's get scientific. One of the defining characteristics of life. Something is not considered alive unless they have all of the characteristics of life, is the ability to independently process energy, meaning cellular respiration, photosynthesis, or fermentation. Fetuses in the earliest weeks are known to be only tiny clumps of cells. Therefore, they have no need to go through any energy processing at all. Later on in the pregnancy, they are able to quote-unquote breathe through the umbilical cord. Without it, they die. They are completely dependent on their mother. If the mother dies, the fetus dies. If the umbilical cord is broken, the fetus dies. It is not able to independently process energy through cellular respiration. It lacks a characteristic of life. It is not scientifically alive. Anti-abortionists plead for science from the other side. Well, here it is. Simple biology. Scientifically speaking, the fetus is not alive until it takes its first independent breath. And adding on to that, the heartbeat exists because the heart needs to form first in order for blood to pump, so cells can begin forming other organs. Here's a photo of a miscarry at 6 weeks, 6 days, in case you're a visual learner. This quote-unquote baby has no brain, just like you. The human uterus automatically rejects and flushes out around 70% of all fertilized eggs, so defining life as beginning at conception essentially makes it illegal to have functioning reproductive organs. The human uterus is one of the most hostile places for an embryo to implant. Guess all of our uteruses are potential serial killers. And it's hostile because human pregnancy is incredibly dangerous by all accounts compared to the rest of the animal kingdom. So bear that in mind whenever someone says, just go through with the pregnancy and give it up for adoption. While we are bringing light to these buried facts, we need to talk about what late-term abortions really are. They have been grossly mischaracterized by the right, ignored by the left, and it is destroying our country. Quote-unquote, late-term abortion is a tragic and rare thing. It happens when there is something very wrong with the fetus, and/or when the mother's life is threatened by the pregnancy. The right has painted it as something done often and casually. Both are untrue. They have said it causes pain to the fetus, when in truth a non-viable fetus growing to full term, being born, and then dying moments later is far more real and painful. This issue is a major linchpin in wording our right to safe and legal abortions because people have believed so many lies. So, with that said, to all those who go on and on about how abortion is murder, yet the mother dying because of being denied one isn't, scientifically speaking, you suck. Ever notice how it's mostly white Republican men and religious nuts who are always telling women what to do with their bodies? Well, that, and also crying crocodile tears about the children, but can't be bothered to support social programs for mothers or children to get health care or education? Don't believe me? Coleman Madison offered an amendment requiring the state of Alabama to pay for medical care to the age of 3 for any child it required a woman to carry to term. It was defeated, 23-6. Once they are born, they don't care. They never did. So I'm just wondering, but if a fetus is a person at 6 weeks pregnant, is that when the child support starts? Is that also when you can't deport the mother because she's carrying a U.S. citizen? Can I insure a 6-week fetus and collect if I miscarry? I just figured if we're going here, we should go all in. Forcing people to have children while opposing policies that ensure access to healthcare, education, housing, and nutrition has nothing to do with the sanctity of life and everything to do with stripping individuals of bodily autonomy as a part of maintaining an oppressed underclass. To that we say, you've been allowed to be unchecked for too long. No more. Your bullshit and hypocrisy is being called out and challenged. If they are so concerned about fetuses, then why don't they protest IVF clinics? IVF procedures produce countless embryos which are discarded. Is it because it's mostly rich white couples who do IVF and this issue isn't about fetuses at all? Huh. Interesting. Call me crazy, but it's like we can see right through you. Alabama put a carve-out in the bill for IVF, meaning they do not care if these embryos are lost. Alabama State Senator Clyde Chambliss even dug himself a hole by saying, "The egg in the lab doesn't apply. It's not in a woman. She's not pregnant." In other words, all they care about is controlling women. Whatever happened to life begins at conception? If what these people care about are embryos, if they truly believe that abortion is murder, then why aren't they calling IVF murder? Answer? Because they don't believe any of it. They believe in controlling women. If they care about fetuses, then why don't they consider miscarriage the biggest public health threat in the world? 50% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage. Usually the woman doesn't even know. Answer? They don't care about fetuses. They only care about controlling women. If you take a woman's right to choose whether or not to have a child, you tell her that her worth is derived solely from her value as a breeder, not her mind, her innate value as a human being. That makes her a second-class citizen. Now that is what this issue is about. If you have an abortion, there's a stigma. If you have a baby outside of marriage or as a teen, there's a stigma. If you get married and don't have babies, there's a stigma. It's almost like it's not about the babies, it's about judging women and controlling their decisions. Speaking of controlling, how are women perceived in The Handmaid's Tale? Hosts. Alright, and what are the women in the eyes of the men that voted on this bill? Hosts. In both cases, women are portrayed and perceived as nothing but a vessel to carry children in. No matter their career, aspirations, or desires, it is simply a woman's role to give birth to life. While this dystopian series is merely fantastical, it would not be completely illogical of you to believe that such a society could become our reality. I mean, look out the window. You don't have to pay for Hulu anymore to see The Handmaid's Tale. It happens to be going on right outside. Hosts. That's all we are to them. Women are basically considered hosts rather than full human beings. I mean, you can't even take an organ from a cadaver without the person having granted permission before they die. We can legally pull the plug on people who are brain dead, even when they have heartbeats, because they are legally dead. Without a brain, you have no cognitive function or awareness of anything, really. But go off on how a heartbeat equals life so you can further oppress women. And yet, women, who are fully functioning people, are not given a choice in many states. And if it surrounds our country, with the people we have on the Supreme Court now, I have no confidence that our rights will be protected. And again, some of us will always have options, but the most vulnerable among us have fewer and fewer and fewer. You can't go to another state. You can't have a long waiting period. It's just that simple. And we shouldn't have to. But I guess it's nice to know women will always have access to free abortion so long as they get pregnant by married Republican congressmen. Scott Lloyd, Tim Murphy, I'm looking at you. It's absolutely fascinating to see people argue that women won't really be punished if abortion is illegal. Here are some things that have already happened to women despite Roe. Melissa Ann Rowland of Utah was charged with murder after one of her twins was a stillborn because she refused C-section. Purvi Patel of Indiana was sentenced to 20 years in prison for feticide. She said she had a miscarriage and no traces of abortifacient were found in her blood work. Angela Carter was 27 years old, 26 weeks pregnant, and had cancer. She was forced to undergo a C-section to try to save the baby despite the risk of her health. They both died. Rennie Gibbs of Mississippi was 16 years old when she delivered a stillborn baby. She was indicted of charges of depraved heart murder after accusations that she used drugs. A woman in Louisiana was jailed on charges of second-degree murder after she went to the hospital for unexplained vaginal bleeding. It was over a year before medical records showed that she had a miscarriage. Christine Taylor of Iowa was charged with attempted feticide after she fell down the stairs at home. Laura Pemberton was in labor, ready to give birth at home when a sheriff arrived, strapped her legs together, and took her to a hospital for a forced C-section. Judge claimed she was endangering her baby by attempting a vaginal birth after a previous cesarean. Regina McKnight had a stillbirth caused by an infection. Prosecutors argued she caused the stillbirth because she used cocaine. A jury found her guilty after 15 minutes of deliberation and was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Texas forced a woman to deliver a stillborn baby. It's mostly women of color, immigrant, and low-income women who are already being punished for using anti-choice laws. And this is while abortion is still legal. Can you imagine what would happen if Roe were overturned? Do you care? Ladies of Georgia and all those other states, listen up. I know I mentioned how you can't go to another state and that we need to actually leave women's bodies alone. But until they listen, know that the Georgia abortion law does not take effect until January 2020. Until then, please help spread the word to help women. First, only take an at-home test. Why? Because of step 2. Second, don't tell anyone you're pregnant. That includes any form of texting, talking, social media, anything. Don't even tell your best friend. Third, go for camping, fishing, or hiking trip. Never tell anyone anything else. Fourth, obtain the abortion and do not sign any waivers. If you do not sign any waivers giving consent for even providers to communicate to other providers, you are safe. Fifth, look up HIPAA. Your information is federally protected. If the one and only person who knows you had an abortion leaks it, they will go to prison. Why? Because they violated HIPAA, and unless you ignored the other rules, they are the only one who knows. Senator Clyde Chambliss saying, "When God creates the miracle of life inside a woman's womb, it's not our place as human beings to extinguish that life." Describing rape as God creating the miracle of life in a woman's womb is one of the most heinous examples of weaponizing religion against women I've ever seen. And he's not the only one. Here's just a selected few I pulled from the large stack to help prove my point. The fact that these are the people voting on what I can do with my body makes me sick to my stomach. Clayton Williams, a Republican from Texas, said, "Rape is kind of like the weather. If it's inevitable, relax and enjoy it." Todd Akin, Republican from Missouri, said, "If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to shut that thing down." Rick Santorum, a Republican from Pennsylvania, said, "Rape victims should make the best of a bad situation." Richard Mourdock, a Republican from Indiana, said, "Even when life begins in that horrible situation of rape, that is something that God intended to happen." And Lawrence Lockman, a Republican from Maine, said, "If a woman has the right to an abortion, why shouldn't a man use his freedom to use his superior strength to force himself on a woman? At least the rapist's pursuit of sexual freedom doesn't, in most cases, result in anyone's death." Are you stupid? How the fuck did you get elected? You know what? Never mind. I know the answer. And, by the way, this is just a PSA, but if you personally believe a rape victim has to keep their baby, especially because God wanted her to get pregnant, stay the fuck away from me. I mean, can you think of any laws that give the government power to make decisions about the male body? To be against abortion and comprehensive sex education and affordable access to birth control is being against fire and fire extinguishers. I'll tell you, if men got pregnant, they'd sell abortion mints at every grocery store checkout right next to the Altoids. What would happen if the roles were reversed? This is a sperm at just 1 day old. Masturbation is mass murder and should be a federal crime. At 1 day, your sperm has 23 chromosomes and a flagellum and can already swim. See how ridiculous that sounds? That's you right now. Or what about this fancy idea? Mandatory vasectomies until you want to have children. They can be reversed, so there's no argument. Come on, guys, let's save lives. What's that? A hard no? Why? Because it's your body and we don't get to make that choice for you? Oh, interesting. Alabama, Georgia, and all those states that are hopping on this idiotic heartbeat bill have indefinitely pissed me off, as I'm sure they have done to many others. According to this Georgia law, if a Georgia resident plans to travel elsewhere to obtain an abortion, she may be charged with conspiracy to commit murder, punishable by 10 years imprisonment. How is this legal? The fact that a doctor who performs an abortion on a rape victim will face more time in prison than a rapist is absolutely insane. If you're convicted of first-degree rape in Alabama, you can serve as few as 10 years in prison. But under this new draconian law that Alabama state senators just tried to pass, if a rape victim has an abortion, it's up to 99 years in prison. Honestly, I think Christian moms who abort their 14-year-old LGBT kids from their home should go to prison for 99 years instead. Just saying. You want to tell me to my face it's not about women? Okay. If women can't have abortions, then the government needs to stop wasting $85 million prescribing Viagra for broken dicks. God broke your dick. The consequences of life. Broken dicks is the natural way of life, just like babies. No abortions for women. No fix-a-broken dick pill for men. Behind millions of successful men is an abortion they don't regret getting with their partner. I urge men to go beyond solidarity and talk about how they've personally benefited from abortion rights too. Not because it's the right thing to do, but because it's true. How about a law that states any politician found to have had paid for an abortion will serve life in prison? I'm sure then you'd change your minds because it affects you. I think no matter what side of the argument you're on, you can't fail to realize just how ridiculous this is. It's the year 2019, and yet 22 male senators have voted to make abortions illegal in Alabama. You know, abortions that only women can have. It's the year 2019. I cannot believe I live in a country that thinks a zygote is a fully realized human being with rights, but still hasn't decided if a black person is. You're pro-life until that baby is poor, transgender, black, gay, Mexican, disabled, or sick. It's 2019, and yet all those who claim to be pro-life are deadly silent. When a woman went into premature labor while being detained, her baby died, and this is ICE's response. A stillbirth is not considered an in-custody death. It's 2019, and yet the Senate Republican Working Group formed to find a consensus on healthcare is all men. That doesn't look like the panel that protects women. That looks like the panel that says, well, she drowned, guess she wasn't a witch. Guess the Salem witch trials are making a comeback. Lovely. It's 2019, and we have a state where an 11-year-old cannot buy a PG-13 movie ticket, buy a lottery ticket, buy cold medicine, buy a T-rated video game, drive a vehicle, and vote. By law, is now required to carry out a full-term pregnancy. This genuinely brings me to tears. Anti-abortion is supposedly pro-life. But do you honestly think a child's body can handle this? Her physical and mental health basically destroyed, and a permanent reminder of the horrific trauma she's already been through. We must also bear in mind that abortions are going to take place whether they are legal or not. Except, as BBC explains, history shows that making abortion legal generally leads to significant reductions in injuries and deaths caused to women by abortion. No shit! By making abortion legal, more women will die, and that is certainly not pro-life at all. What I find hilarious is that you all don't want us to have birth control or abortions, but God forbid we whip out a titty to feed the baby you wanted us to push out. I honestly want them to say this was all a joke, because right now our country is a joke. We have old-ass white men making laws on abortion like they're able to give birth. We have loads of school shootings, people are drowning in college debt, and it's getting harder and harder to survive. If you're pro-life, then fight for a black man's right to live. Take immigrant children out of cages and stop treating them like animals. 6 have already died in U.S. custody. If you're so pro-life, then start treating already born humans at least as well as you are treating an unborn fetus. A child in a cage is a person. My period, 10 days late, is not a person. Men refuse to take birth control because of the symptoms, refuse to use condoms because it doesn't feel as good, and refuse to acknowledge rape and assault against women because that's their bro, but want to put their 2 cents in on what a woman should do with her body? I stuck my penis in you, therefore I am entitled to use you as my personal incubator, and you are now obligated to raise my spawn. However, I retain the right to be involved as little or as much as I feel. Failure to comply shall result in prison or death. Well, I say this in the most ladylike manner I can muster. Go fuck yourself. You're in my womb. I want you out. You don't control this, and you certainly don't control me. You don't own this, and certainly don't own me. You all came from a woman. Did you not learn a single thing? You can't get pregnant. You've never been pregnant. You don't know what it's like to be pregnant. You don't know what a woman goes through when she's pregnant. Do not speak for women. Do not try to control women, and certainly, please, if you have one speck of intelligence left in that brain of yours, do not fuck with women. You misogynistic assholes won't like the outcome. This isn't about being pro-life at all. Cut the bullshit. This is about controlling women. I mean, come on. If they cared about kids, they wouldn't put kids in debt for school lunch. They wouldn't let them drink contaminated water. They wouldn't let climate change destroy their future. Parents could have maternity, paternity leave. They wouldn't put them in cages at the border. Wouldn't let them be murdered in school. They'd invest in school. They'd completely revamp the foster care system. They wouldn't let families experience homelessness. Would make it more accessible to see a doctor and get treatment. They'd end the school-to-prison pipeline. They'd pay living wages so parents could have more family time and not work 3 jobs. They wouldn't let drug companies overcharge for medication. They'd stop building housing on contaminated sites. Teachers wouldn't beg for raises. College debt would be erased. There'd be ample access to non-opioid medicines. Gay conversion wouldn't exist. Trans kids would be able to use the bathroom they identify with. They'd let LGBT couples adopt. They'd teach consent and sex education. They'd ensure poor families had electricity and running water. Food manufacturers wouldn't be able to sell us cheap garbage because fresh food is unaffordable. If they actually cared about the health, safety, and well-being of children, they would address any of these things first, and you wouldn't put people and doctors in prison for abortion. We should pass a woman's heartbeat law. If a woman has a heartbeat, you can't tell her what to do with her goddamn body. Ever. There's not a single thing in this world a man could experience that would come even close to the indignity of being legally forced to carry your rapist baby to term. Why would you want that for us? What have we done to deserve this? Challenge you for a seat at the table? Realize we're worth more than being mere servants to your beck and call? If you were in our shoes, I'm sure you wouldn't want this. So don't do it to us. This is your last warning. We're done asking. We will fight and we will win. Because you don't control us. Not anymore.